Hey guys, this is John. Today we're going to have a look at a classic game played in 1895. This game is right up there with Morphy's Opera House game as one of my favorite of all time. With the white pieces, we have William Steinitz, also known as Wilhelm Steinitz. He changed his name to William a bit later in life. And with the black pieces, the German master, Curt von Bardeleben. And this was played in Hastings, the Super Tournament Hastings in 1895. Extremely strong event. Lasker, the world champion, played. Mikhail Shigorin played. Harry Pillsbury played and ended up winning the event. But this game here won the brilliancy prize for the event. So even though Steinitz was kind of on the second half of his career, he played an absolutely model and immortal game. So Steinitz opened with e4. Von Bardeleben replied with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, and bishop c5, the Giuoco Piano. And now Steinitz played c3. And this is the move that I also like for white. White is looking to build up a big pawn center by playing d4, advancing in the middle of the board with the help of the c3 pawn. Steinitz was well familiar with this variation, in particular in his world championship match with Lasker. He played this several times and without particular success, I have to say, but he was a guy of convictions, so once he decided on an opening, he usually stuck to it. So von Bardeleben played the correct reply, knight f6. Steinitz advanced in the center, d4. E takes d4, and c takes d4. Now in this position, it's imperative that black give a check on b4 to try to disrupt white from simply advancing these pawns forward. So bishop b4 check. And Steinitz played knight c3, which is the riskiest move, but can also lead to great attacking positions for white, especially if black doesn't know what they're doing. Now, modern theory has established that black should play knight takes e4 here and grab the center pawn. The knight on c3 is pinned. White can castle at this point, and the game gets sharp. But von Bardeleben instead played d5, which is a reasonable move, but knight takes e4 is definitely stronger. However, it is good to remember that d5 is an excellent advance for black to get in this line if they get a chance to do so. Steinitz captured, e takes d5. Von Bardeleben recaptured, knight takes d5. Now, note because of the pin on the c3 knight, white can't hope to win material here, so if bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, you're not going to be winning that black queen. There is a pin on the king on e1. So Steinitz instead decided to castle here. And already he's trying to seize the initiative. He's offering black a chance to take on c3 twice. And I should probably move this t, by the way, because I'm going to be demonstrating a few lines here and there. But if knight takes c3 and then b takes c3, black can easily get into trouble. Bishop takes c3, and now queen b3. Creating a queen-bishop battery, attacking f7, also attacking the bishop. If black continues gobbling material here, they just quickly come under fire. Bishop takes f7 check, king f8, bishop a3 check, knight e7, and white has a number of good possibilities here. Even just regaining the bishop would probably be very strong, but rook e1 also looks great. Double attacking the knight on e7. You don't want this to happen if you're black. So at that point, when Steinitz castled, it would not be wise for von Bardeleben to start looking for material. And to his credit, he did not do that. I think he realized what Steinitz was capable of if the game became sharp like that. So after white castles, von Bardeleben played bishop e6, bringing a piece into the game and reinforcing d5. Steinitz played bishop g5. Excellent move. Developing a piece and developing with tempo on the black queen. And as I said, this game is a model for attacking efficiency, and just pay attention to how Steinitz uses his pieces in concert and doesn't get focused on one single operation. You know, much like Morphy in the Opera House game, he's really looking to include all of his pieces in the attack. So bishop g5, von Bardeleben pulled the bishop back to e7. Then Steinitz captured on d5, bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, and now knight takes d5. And black could try to capture on g5 here, but I think it's risky. White can play rook e1 check, or white could even take on c7 and then take g5 and win a pawn. So understandably, von Bardeleben played queen takes d5. So we still have equal material here. Another trade occurs. Bishop takes e7, and knight takes e7. Now this is a good moment to pause and kind of reflect on the position a little bit, because we're getting into the late opening / early middle game, and I think white can be very satisfied with the position. They are ahead in development, but it's necessary for white to prevent black from castling. And I think Steinitz was keenly aware of that. If black manages to castle short or even castle long, you could argue that black is better in the long run because white does have this isolated d4 pawn. It's isolated because there's no pawn on an adjacent file that could protect it, so it would require the defense of the white pieces, and it could be a long-term liability. So if you're white here, you want to try to use your initiative and make black pay a penalty if they want to get their king to safety. So Steinitz played rook e1, pinning the knight on e7, saying, you know, if you want a castle, I'm just going to take your knight. And this would be absolutely winning for white. So this slight jump that white has on black here allows him to keep the initiative going. So here von Bardeleben played f6, which is looking to control the e5 and g5 squares and also potentially give the king the f7 square. I think at this point von Bardeleben was starting to realize that it will be difficult for him to castle by virtue of this pin. So I think he's already considering ways to get his king to the 7th rank and connect his rooks. And now Steinitz's next two moves are really the only two moves I think are up for debate or criticism. He played queen e2 in this position. Again, developing with tempo, threatening queen takes e7 mate, getting the queen off the back rank, connecting the rooks. Modern engines say that queen a4 check is stronger, with ideas like transferring the queen to b4, attacking e7, and even hitting b7. But queen e2, I think, conforms to a lot of excellent principles of development and attack. So von Bardeleben played his queen back to d7 in order to defend. And now Steinitz played rook ac1. You know, he might have been taking an accounting of his position and asking himself what piece is not yet participating in the attack. And it's definitely the queenside rook. So rook ac1, occupying the half-open c-file, eyeing up the pawn on c7. Now at this point, I think von Bardeleben should have played king f7. Again, just to try to get the king off of the back rank, remove the pin, connect the rooks. However, he played c6, which is an understandable move, maybe trying to block the rook's influence down the c-file. But this allows Steinitz to execute an awesome pawn sacrifice and a pretty modern sacrifice, in my opinion. So Steinitz put his isolated queen's pawn to work and played d5, sacrificing this pawn. And now this pawn cannot be captured by the knight. That would be illegal because of the pin. Queen takes d5 is going to run into queen takes e7 checkmate, so that's also no good. Von Bardeleben could try to ignore the pawn, but white is looking to open lines. You know, if king f7, he'll probably take on c6, further open lines in the center of the board. So von Bardeleben did capture c takes d5, so black is now ahead a pawn. But Steinitz jumped his knight into d4. This is the point of the sacrifice. So it's a clearance sacrifice, clearing the d4 square for this knight. And now black has even more threats to think about. If white gets a chance, knight f5 would be an excellent idea, piling up on the e7 knight, even hitting g7 for good measure, but the knight on e7 is the biggest problem, because again, if queen takes f5, you're always running into queen takes e7. So this would be too much for black to cope with. Also, as we will see, this knight can get to the e6 square. So von Bardeleben played king f7, removing the knight f5 threat, because now he could take with the knight if white played that. But Steinitz jumped into e6. So great looking position for the knight, but you may argue that this does block white's play down the e-file. However, Steinitz was keenly aware of how to attack on multiple areas of the board. And with knight e6, he introduces rook c7 as a threat. There are quite a few black pieces on the 7th rank, and rook c7, with the backing of the knight on e6, would be a further excellent attacking idea for white. So in response to this threat, von Bardeleben now played rook f to c8, or sorry, rook h to c8. Now, you might ask why not rook a to c8 instead? Because rook h to c8 does seem to block in this rook on a8. But if rook a to c8 White will play the move that Steinitz ended up playing in the game, which is queen g4, attacking g7 and also threatening knight g5 check, the discovery on the queen. So black will run into similar issues. So rook hc8, and now queen g4. So immediately hitting a new target. Von Bardeleben was saying, hey, I'm going to stop rook c7, and Steinitz says, that's fine, let me attack you on a different area of the board. So threatening the g7 pawn. So Von Bardeleben played g6, addressing that threat. And here is where Steinitz really gets to cash in on his strong attacking play. So he plays knight g5 check. And this is a discovery on the black queen on d7. And there's really only one move for black in order to keep the queen safe. So Von Bardeleben plays king e8. And now comes rook takes e7 check, sacrificing the exchange, giving up a rook for a knight. Although I hesitate to even call this a sacrifice because this rook is untouchable unless black wants to achieve an immediately lost position. If king takes e7, white has a couple good options. Queen b4 check, for one thing, is very strong. You could also play rook e1 check, looking to separate the king from the queen. For example, if king d8, there's knight e6 check, and this king is going to be forced into the line of fire. Here, knight c5 check, hitting the queen twice, discovery, black is busted. So that's what would happen if black were to take with the king. If queen takes e7 check, well, now c8 can be captured. Rook takes c8, rook takes c8, and queen takes c8. The black queen would no longer be guarding. White's going to be up a piece here with an ongoing attack. So Von Bardeleben instead played king f8, which is really the only move here to keep the game going. So rook takes e7 check, he played king f8. Note that king d8 is going to allow queen takes d7 checkmate. So king f8. Now, it seems kind of ridiculous that this would be playable for black because white just took a full knight with check and black didn't take it back, and it seems like white has an ongoing attack. But don't forget, white has a back rank issue with their king. Black is threatening rook takes c1, so you can't just play queen takes d7 and hope to win the game. You're actually going to get checkmated yourself. That's going to backfire very hard. So there is still some intrigue in the position. So after king f8, what does Steinitz do? He keeps the attack going. He plays rook f7 check, protected by the knight on g5. So king takes f7 is not possible. If king e8, well, queen takes d7 is mate. If queen takes f7, again, white can take on c8, and white's going to be up a piece. Similar variation to the one I just described. So rook f7 check. Von Bardeleben has to continue running with the king. He plays king g8. And now rook g7 check, the magic rook. If king takes g7, which is now possible because the knight is not protecting it, this runs into queen takes d7. Notice how white is doing everything with a gain of time. You know, making threats with check. That's how you keep your opponent on their back foot. This would be winning. Queen takes g7 is going to, again, run into rook takes c8, and white will be up too much material. If king f8, trying to run towards the center again, knight takes h7 check is a great reply. And here, whether the king goes to e8 or takes on g7, white can take on d7 with check or checkmate, winning for white. So again, black's options are fairly limited in this seemingly complicated position, but once you examine the threats, you realize that black really doesn't have much of a choice. So Von Bardeleben played king h8, going to the corner. And now Steinitz played rook takes h7 check. And it turns out this was the final moment of the game. Rook takes h7 check. And you might be expecting me to say that Von Bardeleben resigned at this point. But in fact, what happened is that Von Bardeleben left the playing hall at this moment, never to return. And he ended up timing out, and Steinitz was awarded the win as a result. Now, that's generally seen as bad etiquette, and this has been an incident that has been debated over the years in chess. Apparently, Von Bardeleben was somewhat disturbed by the spectators in the playing hall, and especially the spectators getting rambunctious and applauding and being noisy when games were in progress. So it's been put forth that that was the reason he ended up leaving the playing hall, maybe less so because he was getting crushed in this brilliant game, but who knows, and we can only speculate as to his mindset. But at any rate, Steinitz won the game, and he demonstrated why this position was ultimately winning, and he demonstrated this for the crowd. It's a very nice variation. So king takes h7 is illegal. The knight is protecting the rook. Again, queen takes h7, I'll just say for the third or fourth time, is going to run into rook takes c8 check, just winning. So black would have to continue marching with their king g8. And now the rook can come back to g7. This is not a repetition of the position because white managed to pick off the h7 pawn, which is important. Again, king takes g7, queen takes d7, queen takes g7, runs into rook takes c8. King f8 is again going to run into knight h7, and this queen will finally be captured. So king h8 would be the only move here. And we have a further king hunt, queen h4 check, which is going to force king takes g7, queen h7 check, king f8 forced, queen h8 check, king e7 forced, queen g7 check. And now if the king tries to run to the center, king d6, white can play queen takes f6 check, and black's going to get mated here. Queen e6, queen takes e6 would be checkmate. Note that the king can't go to the c file because of this white rook that's been sitting there for a while. So queen g7 check. Black would, if they want to keep the game going, probably play king to e8. But further checks come. Queen g8 check, king e7, queen f7. Note that white is inching closer here. King d6 is again going to run into queen takes f6 with mate on the next move. So king d8, queen f8 check. Again, no running to c7 when the rook is patrolling that square. So queen e8, and now a final elegant combination, white to move and mate in 2 here. Knight f7 check. Queen can't capture because of the pin. King d7 is forced, and queen d6 checkmate. And this was the combination that Steinitz demonstrated for the adoring crowd. And this is the game that won Steinitz the Brilliancy Prize at Hastings 1895. And this game has subsequently gone down in chess history. So again, a model of attacking efficiency, the way that Steinitz played the opening, wasting no time on multiple piece move operations, like really prioritizing getting all his pieces into the game, even with moves like rook a to c1. That pawn sacrifice with d5, so exploiting the fact that black has to keep their king in the center and really has to scramble for safety. That d5 move freed up the d4 square for the knight to come in and create further threats. The way in which he attacked on multiple areas of the board, so when he threatened rook c7 but then abruptly switched to queen g4 on the next move, threatening queen takes g7 or knight g5. Great game for study, and we can only marvel now in 2019 when I'm recording this video at the way that this game was played. It still holds up excellently. I think, again, that queen e2 move and rook ac1 are really the only decisions that a modern engine is going to take issue with, but nevertheless, we're still very strong ideas for white. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye, guys.